thought being a millionaire invisible, but money can't buy you a seat at the table when you're... Hunk up was his son, trusting him to be okay tonight. Loneliness isn't loud, it's quiet. It's eating dinner.
I thought I'd survived the worst day of my life a year ago when I signed those divorce papers. But I was wrong, because the worst day was the morning 2 cops showed up at my door with handcuffs and my ex-wife's lies. The pounding started at 6:11 in the morning. Not a knock. A demand. The kind that makes your heart stop before your brain even catches up. I stumbled out of bed, pulled on yesterday's jeans, and opened the door to 2 police officers standing on my porch like I'd committed murder in my sleep. "Ethan Cole?" the taller one asked, hand resting near his belt. "Yeah, that's me. We need to ask you some questions about a complaint filed last night." My stomach dropped. "Complaint? What complaint?" "Allegations of harassment," the shorter officer said, pulling out a notepad. "Unwanted contact." The complainant mentioned a history of instability. I felt the ground tilt. Harassment? Instability? I hadn't contacted anyone. I'd been home all night watching a game and eating leftover pizza alone like I did most nights now. Who filed this? I asked, though some sick part of me already knew. "Your ex-wife, Lydia Cole." Well, Lydia Brennan now. There it was. Her name like poison in my quiet morning. The neighbors were watching now. Mrs. Patterson from next door had her curtains pulled back just enough. The retired guy across the street pretended to check his mailbox but kept glancing over. I could feel their eyes, their judgment, their assumptions writing themselves in real time. The officers asked their questions. Calm. Professional. Routine for them. A nightmare for me. Had I contacted her recently? Yes, one text. Last night. She texted me first. Did I have proof? I fumbled for my phone, showed them the thread. Her message at 10:47 p.m. "We need to talk. Urgently." My response at 10:51, "I'm busy. Find another time." That was it. 11 words that apparently made me a harasser. They took notes. Told me to avoid contact. Said they'd be in touch if needed. Then they left, and I stood there in my doorway watching them drive away while my neighbors watched me. They didn't arrest me. They didn't need to. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. By noon, 3 clients had called to reschedule. By 2 p.m., my boss wanted a quick chat about maintaining professional appearances. By evening, my phone was full of texts from people I hadn't heard from in months, all suddenly very concerned, all asking careful questions that really meant, "Did you do something?" I sat in my living room that night, the same room that used to feel peaceful after the divorce, and realized Lydia hadn't wanted to talk at all. She'd wanted to destroy me. And the scariest part? I had no idea why. 12 hours earlier, my phone had buzzed on the coffee table. I almost didn't look. It was late, past 10:30, and I'd finally started to relax. The game was close, my beer was cold, and for once I wasn't thinking about anything that mattered. Then I saw her name on the screen. Lydia. My ex-wife who I hadn't heard from in 4 months. The woman I'd spent a year trying to forget. "We need to talk. Urgently." I stared at those 5 words like they might rearrange themselves into something less threatening. Lydia never used the word urgently unless she wanted something. Control usually. Or money. Or to make sure I knew she was still calling the shots even after the divorce. My first instinct was to ignore it. Let it sit there unanswered like all the other little power plays she'd tried over the years. But something about the timing felt wrong. It was too late for casual conversation. Too vague to be an emergency. So I did something stupid. I responded. "I'm busy. Find another time." 11 words. Short, dismissive, exactly the kind of boundary I should have set years ago when we were still married and she was still pretending to care about my opinion. It felt good typing it. Felt even better hitting send. For about 10 seconds. Then this cold feeling crept up my spine, the kind you get when you realize you've made a mistake but can't take it back. I stared at my phone waiting for the 3 dots that meant she was typing. Waiting for the explosion, the guilt trip, the manipulation disguised as concern. Nothing came. She read it. I could see the little check marks. But no response. That should have been my first warning. Lydia always needed the last word. Always. The silence was worse than any argument we'd ever had. I tried to go back to the game but couldn't focus. Tried to finish my beer but it tasted wrong. Finally gave up and went to bed around midnight, telling myself I was paranoid, that I was reading too much into a simple text message from someone who didn't matter anymore. I was wrong about that too. Because at 6:11 the next morning, Those cops were at my door, and I understood exactly what Lydia's silence had meant. She'd been making her move. The divorce happened on a Tuesday. October 15th, a year and 2 months ago. I remember because it was the same day our old neighbor's dog died, and I thought that was fitting somehow. Everything ending at once. We'd been married for 6 years. Together for 8. And for most of that time I'd convinced myself we were happy. Or at least I'd convinced myself that the unhappiness was normal. That everyone felt suffocated sometimes. That all marriages required you to shrink yourself down to fit someone else's idea of who you should be. Lydia was good at that. Making you feel like your thoughts were wrong, your feelings were excessive, your needs were unreasonable. She never yelled. Never threw things. She just looked at you with this disappointed expression and sighed, and somehow that was worse than any fight. By the end, I'd stopped talking about work because she'd find a way to make it boring. Stopped seeing friends because she'd pout for days after. Stopped having opinions about anything that mattered because it was easier to just agree. The divorce was her idea, which surprised no one except maybe me. She'd met someone new. A guy from her yoga class or book club or wherever she'd been spending her evenings while I worked late trying to afford the life she wanted. I didn't fight it. Didn't beg. Just signed the papers and sold the house and split everything down the middle like we were dividing up groceries. The year after was quiet. Lonely but quiet. I moved into a smaller place across town. Took a demotion at work that paid less but stressed me out less. Started running in the mornings. Read books. Existed without constantly wondering if I was disappointing someone. It wasn't happiness exactly, but it was peace, and after 6 years with Lydia, peace felt like luxury. But about 3 months ago, I'd started going through old files from the house sale. Receipts, tax documents, boring stuff I'd shoved in a box and ignored. And I'd noticed something weird about the rental property we'd owned together for 2 years before selling it. Numbers that didn't add up. Deposits that appeared then disappeared. Expenses that seemed inflated. I'd meant to ask my accountant about it, but work got busy and I forgot. Now, sitting in my living room with a harassment complaint hanging over my head and my reputation circling the drain, those weird numbers felt a lot less boring. They felt like a pattern. By Thursday morning, my life had turned into a horror movie where everyone whispered but no one asked questions directly. Randy from accounting avoided the break room when I was there. My boss started CCing GHR on every email. The receptionist who usually joked with me about football suddenly became very interested in her computer screen whenever I walked past. Nobody said the word harassment out loud, but everyone knew. That's the thing about accusations. They don't need proof to do damage. They just need to exist. I tried to work but couldn't focus. Tried to eat but nothing tasted right. Tried to sleep but kept jolting awake at 3 a.m. convinced I heard pounding on my door again. My lawyer, this older guy named Frank who'd handled my divorce, called me Wednesday afternoon after I'd left him a panicked voicemail. "Ethan, slow down. Tell me exactly what happened." I told him about the text. The cops. The complaint. The vague allegations that made me sound dangerous when all I'd done was respond to a message. Frank was quiet for a long moment. "Has Lydia contacted you at all in the past 6 months?" "No. Not since we finalized everything in March." "And you haven't contacted her?" "Never. I deleted her number. I wanted nothing to do with her." Another pause. I could hear him typing. "Ethan, I'm going to look into something. Don't contact her. Don't respond if she reaches out. Don't post anything on social media. Just sit tight." "What are you looking into?" "A hunch. Give me 48 hours." He hung up before I could ask more questions, which only made the anxiety worse. Friday afternoon, 3 clients officially canceled their contracts. 2 cited internal restructuring. 1 was honest enough to say they couldn't risk the association. I sat in my car in the parking lot after work and wanted to scream. Or cry. Or drive somewhere far away and never come back. Instead, I went home and found an envelope shoved under my door. No return address. Just my name handwritten across the front in letters I didn't recognize. Inside was a single piece of paper. A screenshot of a text message. From Lydia to someone named Marcus. The police visit should scare him enough. If not, we move to phase 2. He can't prove anything, and by the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. My hands shook holding that paper. Phase 2? Too late for what? Then my phone rang. Frank's name on the screen. "Ethan, we need to meet. Right now. I found something and you're not going to believe it." His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Excitement mixed with anger. "Lydia's been under federal investigation for 8 months. Frank's office smelled like old coffee and legal documents. I sat across from his desk Friday night at 7 p.m. while he spread papers out like he was building a case for murder. Financial fraud, he said, sliding the first document toward me. Specifically, real estate fraud connected to rental properties. My chest tightened. The property we own together. Exactly. He tapped another paper. Lydia's been investigated since last April. Money laundering through rental income. Falsified repair expenses. Tax evasion. The works. I stared at bank statements with my name on them. Signatures that looked like mine but felt wrong. Deposits I'd never made. Expenses I'd never approved. I didn't do any of this, I said, my voice barely working. I know. But look at the dates. Frank pointed to a timeline he'd highlighted in yellow. Most of this activity happened in the last 8 months. After your divorce. After you had no access to these accounts. So she forged my signature. She forged everything. And here's the genius part. She made sure your name stayed on enough documents to implicate you if investigators came looking. My stomach turned. She set me up. She tried to. But she got sloppy. Frank pulled out another stack of papers. The feds have been watching her accounts. They've got records of her accessing systems using your old login credentials. They've got IP addresses from her apartment. They've got timestamped security footage from her bank. Then why did cops show up at my door? Because she panicked. Frank leaned back in his chair, almost smiling. 2 weeks ago, investigators contacted her lawyer. Told her they were preparing charges. She realized she needed a scapegoat, someone to point to and say, see? It was him, not me. The harassment complaint suddenly made terrible sense. The text message, I said slowly. She wanted me to respond. She wanted documentation that I was contacting her. Exactly. She probably planned to build a pattern. Make you look unstable, aggressive, maybe even dangerous. Then when fraud charges came down, she'd say you manipulated her, forged documents in her name, that she was scared of you. I thought about that screenshot someone had slid under my door. Lydia's text about phase 2. Who sent me this? I held up the envelope. Frank's expression shifted. That's the interesting part. I think someone in her circle knows what she's doing and doesn't approve. Maybe a friend with a conscience. Maybe someone she crossed who wants revenge. What happens now? Now. Frank gathered his papers. Now we go on offense. I've already contacted the federal investigator handling her case. They want to talk to you Monday morning. You're going to tell them everything, show them your phone records, prove you haven't touched those accounts in over a year. And Lydia? Frank's smile was sharp. Lydia's lawyer called me 3 hours ago requesting an emergency settlement meeting. She wants to talk terms before this goes further. She wants to pay me off. She wants you silent. But here's what she doesn't know. The feds don't need your cooperation to charge her. They've got her cold. Your testimony just makes it airtight. I sat there trying to process everything. A week ago, my biggest problem was loneliness. Now I was caught in the middle of federal fraud charges and my ex-wife's desperate attempt to destroy me before she went down herself. What's phase 2? I asked quietly. Frank's smile faded. I don't know. But we're not going to wait around to find out. He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. I'm calling the investigator now. We're moving up that Monday meeting to tomorrow morning. And Ethan? He looked at me seriously. Don't go home tonight. Stay in a hotel. Somewhere Lydia doesn't know about. You think she'd actually do something? I think desperate people do desperate things. And right now, you're the only thing standing between her and a federal prison cell. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I showed Frank the screen. He nodded and I answered on speaker. Heavy breathing. Then Lydia's voice, shaking. Ethan, please. We really do need to talk. Frank hit mute before I could say anything stupid. His eyes locked on mine, shaking his head hard. Don't engage, he mouthed. But hearing Lydia's voice again after everything, after the cops, the whispers, the destroyed reputation, something inside me snapped. I grabbed the phone off speaker and unmuted. Talk? You want to talk now? After you sent police to my door? After you tried to ruin my life? Silence. Then a shaky breath. I can explain everything, Ethan. Please. Just meet me somewhere public. Tomorrow. I'll tell you the truth. The truth? I laughed bitter. Like how you forged my signature. Or how you're under federal investigation. The line went dead silent. Not even breathing now. How did you? Her voice cracked. Who told you that? Doesn't matter. What matters is I know what you did. All of it. Frank was frantically waving his hands, signaling me to stop talking, but I couldn't. A year of silence, of swallowing everything, of letting her control the narrative, it all came pouring out. You set me up. Made me look like a criminal so you could save yourself. And when that wasn't enough, you filed a fake harassment complaint to make me look dangerous. It wasn't fake, she said, but her voice had no conviction. You scared me. I scared you? With 11 words? After you sent me an urgent text first? Another long pause. When she spoke again, the desperation was gone, replaced by something colder. You should have just talked to me, Ethan. This could have been simple. What's phase 2, Lydia? I heard her sharp inhale. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. I looked at Frank, who was typing furiously on his laptop. Enjoy your meeting with the feds. I hung up before she could respond. Frank looked up from his computer, face pale. She just booked a flight to Costa Rica. Leaves Sunday morning. She's running. Not if I can help it. He grabbed his phone and dialed. This is Frank Morrison. I need to speak to Agent Castellano immediately. It's urgent. While Frank talked to the investigator, I sat there replaying Lydia's voice in my head. The shake in it. The cold shift when she realized I knew too much. This wasn't the woman I'd married. Or maybe it was and I'd just been too blind to see it. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Another text. Don't trust Frank. He's working with her. Get out now. I showed Frank the message. He read it twice, face unreadable. It's a tactic, he said finally. She's trying to isolate you. Make you paranoid. Don't fall for it. But doubt had already crept in. How did Lydia know I was with Frank right now? How did she know we'd connected her to the fraud? How long have you known about the investigation? I asked carefully. Frank's eyes narrowed. Since Wednesday. When you called me panicking about the police visit, I made some calls. I told you this. But you handled my divorce. You had access to all those property documents a year ago. Ethan. His voice went hard. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm asking how Lydia knew to target those specific accounts with my credentials unless someone who understood the legal structure told her how. Frank stood up slowly. I've been a lawyer for 32 years. I've never once betrayed a client's confidence, and I'm not about to start with you. We stared at each other across his desk. Outside, night had fully fallen. The office was empty except for us. My phone buzzed again. Check his bank records. March deposit. Same amount Lydia withdrew from the rental account. I felt sick. Frank, can you prove you didn't take money from Lydia? His face went red. Get out of my office. Just show me your bank statements from March. Prove this text is lying. I don't have to prove anything to you. Either you trust me or you don't. And that was the problem, wasn't it? I didn't know who to trust anymore. Lydia had taught me that people could lie with a smile for years. That the person sleeping next to you could be planning your destruction. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. If you walk out now, Frank called after me, you're on your own. The feds, Lydia, all of it. You'll have no legal protection. I stopped at the doorway, hand on the handle. Did you take money from her? The silence lasted too long. It was a consultation fee, Frank said quietly. Last March. She wanted advice about dissolving a business partnership. I didn't know it was connected to fraud. I swear, Ethan. You should have told me. I know. I left without another word and drove to a hotel on the far side of town, paying cash and using a fake name. Sat on the scratchy bedspread staring at my phone trying to figure out my next move. The federal investigator's number was in my recent calls. I could phone directly, bypass Frank, tell them everything myself. But what if that anonymous texter was right about more than just Frank? What if this whole thing went deeper than I understood? At 2 a.m, someone knocked on my hotel room door. 3 sharp raps. Then silence. I looked through the peephole and saw nothing but empty hallway. On the floor, someone had slid another envelope under the door. Inside was a photo. Lydia and Frank having coffee together. Dated 2 weeks ago. On the back, written in the same handwriting as before, they planned this together. Meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. Riverside Park. Come alone if you want proof. I didn't sleep. Just sat in that hotel room watching the clock tick toward dawn, trying to decide if I was walking into a trap. By 9:30 Saturday morning, I was parked near Riverside Park, watching joggers and dog walkers move through the cold November air like nothing was wrong with the world. At 9:55, a woman sat down on the bench I'd been told to wait near. Mid-40s, professional clothes, sunglasses even though it was cloudy. She didn't look at me. Just spoke quietly while pretending to check her phone. I'm Marcus's sister, she said. The man Lydia's been seeing. My stomach dropped. Marcus. The name from that screenshot. Why are you helping me? Because she did the same thing to my brother that she's doing to you. Made him think he was special, used his business connections to hide money, then tried to frame him when things got complicated. Where is he now? He took a deal with the feds. Testified against her in exchange for immunity. But she doesn't know that yet. The woman pulled an envelope from her purse and set it on the bench between us. Everything's in here. Bank transfers. Emails between Lydia and Frank. Plans they made to divide up the rental property money. Your signatures were forged, but Frank helped make the documents look legitimate enough to delay investigation. Why would Frank do that? Lydia promised him 30%. He's broke, Ethan. Bad investments, gambling debts. She exploited that. I took the envelope with shaking hands. The meeting she wanted with you tomorrow? It wasn't to talk. She was going to record you saying anything that could be twisted into a confession, then use that to negotiate her own deal. And phase 2. The woman finally looked at me. Her eyes were sad. She was going to plant evidence in your apartment. Drugs, stolen property, something that would land you in jail long enough for her to disappear. But you stopped her. No. She stood up. You stopped her by being smarter than she expected. By getting a lawyer, by documenting everything. She underestimated you. What happens now? Now you take that envelope to Agent Castellano at the federal building. Today. Before Lydia boards that plane tomorrow morning. What about Frank? He's already being investigated. Has been for 3 weeks. She adjusted her sunglasses. You were never alone in this, Ethan. You just didn't know who your real allies were. She walked away before I could ask anything else. I sat on that bench holding evidence of my ex-wife's complete betrayal, and instead of anger, I felt something stranger. Relief. Because for the first time in a year, I wasn't questioning my own sanity. Wasn't wondering if I'd imagined the manipulation, the gaslighting, the slow erosion of my sense of self. It had all been real. And now I had proof. The federal building was cold and intimidating, all marble floors and serious faces. Agent Castellano met me in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and stress. I handed her the envelope. She spent 40 minutes going through every document, making notes, occasionally looking up at me with expressions I couldn't read. Finally, she closed the folder. Mr. Cole, we've been building a case against Lydia Brennan for 8 months. What you've given me here accelerates our timeline significantly. So you'll arrest her? We already have a warrant. We were planning to execute it Monday morning, but given this new evidence of flight risk and witness tampering, we'll move tonight. What about Frank? Mr. Morrison is cooperating with our investigation. He made poor choices, but he's not our primary target. She leaned forward. I need to ask you something directly. Did you have any knowledge of or participation in the financial fraud connected to your rental property? No. I didn't even know something was wrong until 3 months ago when I found weird numbers in old files. And you never confronted Lydia about this? We weren't in contact. I wanted nothing to do with her after the divorce. Agent Castellano nodded slowly. That probably saved you. If you'd confronted her earlier, she might have moved against you sooner, planted evidence before we started watching her accounts. So I'm clear? You were never really a suspect. But yes, you're clear. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. What happens to her now? That depends on a lot of factors. But realistically, she's looking at federal prison time. Multiple counts of fraud, forgery, money laundering, obstruction of justice. I left the federal building around 3 p.m. and drove home for the first time in 2 days. My apartment looked the same, but everything felt different. At 7 p.m. my phone rang. Agent Castellano. We arrested her an hour ago at her apartment. She was in the middle of packing. Did she say anything? She asked if you were the one who turned her in. Pause. I told her yes. And? She said, and I quote, he was always smarter than he looked. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There's one more thing, Agent Castellano said. We found documents in her apartment. Plans for phase 2. You need to know what she was going to do. I already know. Plant drugs or something. No. The agent's voice went soft. She was going to file a restraining order claiming you'd threatened her life. Then she was going to stage a break-in at her apartment and tell police you'd tried to attack her. My blood went cold. If that had worked, you'd be in jail right now facing felony charges. And she'd be free. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about all the ways my life could have gone wrong. All the ways Lydia had tried to destroy me because I'd been an inconvenient obstacle to her freedom. And I realized something important. She hadn't broken me because I'd stopped letting her. 3 months later, I sat in a different conference room watching Lydia take a plea deal. 5 years in federal prison. Restitution to the victims of her fraud scheme. Permanent record. She looked smaller somehow. Less intimidating. Just a person who'd made terrible choices and run out of escape routes. Our eyes met once across that room. She didn't look angry or apologetic. Just empty. Outside afterward, Frank approached me carefully. He'd lost his law license but avoided jail time by cooperating fully with investigators. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was desperate and stupid, and I let her manipulate me into betraying you." "I know." "That's it? Just I know." "What else is there to say, Frank? You made choices. So did Lydia. So did I. We all have to live with them now." He nodded and walked away looking older than I remembered. I drove home through afternoon traffic, listening to nothing but road noise and my own thoughts. My reputation had slowly rebuilt. Clients had returned. Neighbors had apologized for their assumptions. Life had resumed its quiet rhythm. But I was different now. I'd learned that silence isn't always weakness. That rebuilding yourself slowly and privately is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. That manipulation always leaves evidence if you're patient enough to find it. That night, I sat in my living room with all the lights off, phone in my hand, scrolling to Lydia's contact. I'd never deleted it after all. Now I pressed the button and watched her name disappear from my phone forever. The room felt bigger somehow. Lighter. For the first time since the divorce, the silence wasn't something imposed on me. It was something I'd chosen. Something I'd earned. And that made all the difference. I stood up, opened my laptop, and started writing an email to a consulting firm in another state. A fresh start. New opportunities. A life built on my own terms. The past would always be there, but it didn't get to write my future anymore. That job belonged to me now. If you've made it this far, thank you for being part of this journey. Drop a comment below and let me know what you thought about this story. Your insights and experiences inspire others more than you know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. We've got more incredible tales of survival, strength, and second chances coming your way. See you in the next one.